Good evening, and we are live. Season 2, conversation number 10 in our conversation series. And today we have Dr. Bharat Shah as our guest today. These conversations are brought to you by the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, which is a unit of the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement. These conversations hope to bring speakers and people from a wide range of backgrounds and discuss topics spanning social issues, leadership, education, culture, heritage, and much more. Today's conversation explores the rationale of naturopathy, the principles of yoga, lifestyle, and diet, while also examining the intuitive power and inherent intelligence of the human body to heal itself and how naturopathy aids this process. It's my pleasure to have Dr. Bharat Shah as our guest today. Dr. Bharat Shah is Director, Nisargopachar Kendra at Vinoba Ashram, Vadodara, Gujarat. He's someone who made a conscious decision to shift from the practice of pediatrics to naturopathy, yoga, and traditional medicine. He's a member of the governing body of the National Institute of Naturopathy and the steering committee of the NCB of the Ayush Government of India. I will keep the introduction short because we need to look at the conversation itself, and we will get to know Dr. Shah better during the course of this conversation. Doctor, it's a pleasure and privilege to have you as a guest today, Dr. Shah, and welcome to. Dr. Shah, you're muted. You might want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah, thank you, Ramesh, and namaste all.
Yes. I'll start with a very question that you might have faced quite often, but it needs to be asked. It is very rare for someone trained in allopathy and English medicine to make the shift to naturopathy. What was it that motivated you to make the shift, and why the shift, and how has the shift been for you?
Yeah, first of all, Ramesh, I would like to thank you for taking all the efforts to spread the message of naturopathy and holistic health. And coming back to your question, well, it has not been a particular incident in my life, but it has been a journey for me. I was, when I was studying in high school and college, I was staying in a naturopathy center itself. My mother used to manage a naturopathy center. But at that time, I was not at all interested in naturopathy. And more so after taking my graduation in allopathy and post-graduation in allopathy. See, generally we got brainwashed thinking that the only scientific system to take care of health is allopathy. And that was the same case for me also. But fortunately, within just 5 years of my practice, I started realizing the limitations of modern medicine. And I realized that whatever the treatment that we were providing, the treatment were basically to take care of the manifestation of the pathology and not the root cause of the pathology. So then I started thinking about it. Probably the roots or the seeds were there since I was in my childhood. I was associated with a naturopathy center very indirectly, so to say. But then I decided, because we never had any opportunity to study alternative system of medicine, or we do not get any kind of exposure in that. So I decided to take 1 year break from my work after 5 years of my practice and to study.
Okay, so you were practicing pediatrics when you when you decided to make the shift.
Yeah, it was not of course, not a private practice. I was working in a tribal area, in a charitable hospital in a tribal area. But then I decided to leave that job and took 1 year, complete 1 year break, and to get exposed to different systems of medicine. My focus was on Ayurveda, naturopathy, yoga, and medicinal plants in general. It's other than even Ayurveda also. And then during that 1 year, I realized that there is a lot of potential in this so-called alternative system of medicine. And then I started practicing a kind of integrative medicine based on allopathy. My base was still allopathy, but I used to integrate whatever little things that I have learned from alternative systems on these four areas. And gradually, there was some circumstances that pulled me to naturopathy. So kind of, I would say that it was not by choice, but then I was just pulled there. Uh, the naturopathy center where I was associated earlier, they had certain issues and they wanted my help. So I decided that I will be giving 1 year for supporting that particular institute. And during that association, I realized that there are lot many good results that generally we do not get with allopathy. We used to get with naturopathy, and that changed me completely. Then I thought that whatever I wanted to do, the base should be naturopathy rather than allopathy, and whatever integration I wanted to make, it should be based on with along with naturopathy, because see, naturopathy talks about many things like lifestyle change, diet, and mind and emotions and everything that I wanted to do. So that is how it's kind of, I would say it's a journey for me. Over a few years, I and now and I realized that whatever decision I took at whatever point of time, now I am on right path, I would say.
It's a very interesting journey, Dr. Shah. Do you at all use medicines from the allopathic system at all now, or is it completely naturopathy, Ayurveda?
Yeah, I'm working with a naturopathy center at present, and it's kind of integrated practice that we do with naturopathy. Then, of course, the base is naturopathy. But as you know, most of the patients, we call them health seeker rather than patient. Most of the health seekers, they come with various kinds of problems, and most of them come with medicines. So we do not stop altogether, but we just select which are the medicines which requires to be stopped altogether, and which are the medicines that are required to be continued. And as we go on the naturopathic treatment, and as we get the results, gradually we taper out the medicines along with the results or parameters based on the parameters.
I was just watching one of the videos, and I also was reading up one on one of the on your website about what you say. Now, a very interesting. No, I think it was a PowerPoint slide that you were sharing on a video, where you say that the human body has a natural and innate intelligence, an ability to heal itself. And if only we give it the opportunity and the time for it to heal itself. If you could explain what exactly you mean by it, and how naturopathy helps in this process.
Yeah. I believe that our body is a marvelous machine. Rather, it's too, I mean, I would say too kind of small word to say machine. It's not machine, but it's a living body, but it's a marvelous body. And it has inherent capacity. It knows how to develop itself. See, we get the whole human body is evolved out of one single cell. And from that one single cell, we have different kinds of cells, different kinds of tissues, different kinds of organs. Every organ has different functions, different structure, and they all are developed from one single cell, a fertilized ovum, so to say. The body also knows how to maintain it, and it also knows how to destruct it. So everything is self-programmed. I would like to give a few examples of how the body takes care of itself. See, when we get a cut in our skin, at that time, when we get a cut, then we go to the doctor, and the doctor will clean the wound, and will, if the cut is pretty long, it will suture the skin, and will ask us that will you come after maybe 7 days, 10 days, and will remove the sutures. Suppose the patient, says that, doctor, I am in a hurry and do something give me some medicine or do some whatever you want to do, but let it be healed or the suture should be removed within 3 days. What the doctor will say? It's not possible. See, basically, the healing of the skin is done by nature itself. It's a prerogative of nature. The doctor can keep the two cut ends of the skin together by taking the sutures, but nobody can heal the skin. Same thing happens with fractured bone. Same thing happens with the injured blood vessel. When the blood vessel is injured, generally, if the wound is small, we generally give the pressure and keep it for a few minutes there. And then the bleeding is stopped on its own. But within the blood vessel, there is a thrombus formation, and the thrombus formation occurs on its own. The size of the thrombus formation, the place of thrombus formation, all is decided by the inherent healing wisdom of the body. Nobody is there to, give medicine to decide what will be the size of the thrombus and so on. So everything happens in a best possible way to heal the body. And this energy or this healing power is there in each and every cell, each and every tissue of our body. So what we need to do is just to provide a conducive environment so that the body can heal upon itself. Most of the time, we hinder these processes, and that is basically the root cause for the disease, I would like to say.
So one of the things that there is this school of thought that increasingly allopathy is there is a place for English medicine, particularly when we want to do interventions or in emergency therapy and all of those things, and and obviously very clearly that there is no argument that there is space for alternative medicines systems that provide for a rather more, if I may say so, a rather slower but a more natural way of healing. So where do you think we need to strike the balance between the obvious need for emergency interventions and emergency medicine, which is the allopathic system, versus versus the natural medicine, and how do we actually bring about balance in these two? Is that when you talk of integration and that kind of
yeah, it's a very good question, Ramesh. What I have understood over a period of time that whenever there is disturbance in the physiology, so as that disturbance causes damage to the body, at that point of time we need to intervene. Otherwise, we should allow our body to work upon itself. Suppose a patient with diarrhea starts getting dehydration, then we need the intervention. Suppose it gets to the level where we have the disease is worsening to a stage where the physiology will be disturbed or there will be chance of complication. At that point of time, we need to intervene. Otherwise, it is better that we allow the body to work upon itself and just observe to a level that it doesn't harm the body.
Okay. And so, what is the main focus in naturopathy? Because I'm beginning to understand that one of the ways that naturopathy perhaps works, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, is that when I hear you speak, it seems to me that it's possible for us to teach our body as well as our mind to accept the fact that they have the ability to treat themselves. Is that a correct assumption that I'm making? Is it possible for us to teach our body and mind?
Yeah, yeah. Rather than teaching, body knows. What we need to do is to learn, or rather have that kind of awareness that what are the messages the body is trying to give us. Like say when we are sick, at times we get bitter taste in our mouth. That is a signal that we do not, our digestive system is not ready to digest the food. We need to listen that. Whenever we are tired, we need to take rest. But generally, people, if they have pending work, they would like to take a kind of strong tea or strong coffee just to pull on the work that is pending. That can happen once in a while, but if it happens on maybe regular basis, it will definitely affect, have negative impact on our body. So the best thing the naturopathy has taught me is to live life in accordance with the nature's basic principle. They are simple basic principles, and if we just try to follow that, most of our work is, I would say, it is done. And we also need to listen to the signals that the body and mind is providing to us. So these are the two important lessons I have learned while working with naturopathy. And if we can take care of these two, important things, I think we can come out, we can remain healthy by and large, and we can come out of the disease also quite well. And for both the things, we need to have a heightened level of awareness. So that is also quite
So
important.
when you speak of heightened level of awareness, I can relate to that in the sense that you must have the ability to be able to listen to the signals and the signs and symptoms that the body throws up.
Yeah,
But most of us, live in a world where we hardly have time for anything. We are either running from one meeting to the next, or we are constantly, tied to the gadgets. Interestingly, even this call is happening over even this meeting is happening over a digital medium. Uh, I have seen personally, I have lived through a phase where mobile phones did not exist, and we now seem to think that we cannot live without looking into a screen. How does one manage the need to be technologically savvy, and also being able to I have a feeling that many times the body we are not able to listen to the signals of the body, primarily because our minds are so cluttered and we are so tied up in doing so many things. How do we balance that?
yeah, it is very much individualized. The answer everybody has to find out on his own. But basically, nature has its own laws, and we need to follow that. We need to obey that. If you put your finger in a fire, you are going to get burned. There is no question about that. You can't, if you're going to live an unhealthy life, it will definitely have impact on our health. So, it is as simple as like that.
That's the question I wanted to ask. I think Mayank Goyal has also put it into the chat box. I think people are very curious to know what are these signals. Could you give a couple of examples of
Yeah,
what are the signals that the body or the mind can provide us when we?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like as far as diet is concerned, it is basically simple, nourishing food that is required for the body. We can have breakfast maybe around 8, between 8 to 9 a.m., our lunch between 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and dinner around 7 p.m. or so, or before, as early after sunset or before sunset, rather, it would be better. We can have, at least 3 to 4 hours of gap between two meals. Rather, the cooked meal should not be more than 2 or 3 times in a day, at the most 3 times, but not more than that. No tidbits, no munching in between the meals. So these are, avoid kind of spicy food, oily food, take adequate quantity of fruits and vegetables. So these are simple rules regarding food, and definitely it needs to be changed depending on the maybe season to some extent, according to one's own prakriti also. So it differs from prakriti to season and all that. But there are basically simple rules. As far as our vihar is concerned, we also need to take care of how much rest our body requires, and we definitely need to give that. It also requires exercise and maybe some time during the day on empty stomach. We need to give exercise to the body. Other things that are very much important are how do we respond to the stress or stressful situation. That is also very, very important. And how do we relate uh, with our emotions for our own selves, as well as emotions towards others. So both the things, people have negative emotions to their own selves, as well as negative emotions to others also. People can have positive emotions to their own selves and positive emotions to their others also. Positive emotions will have positive impact. Negative emotions will have negative impact. And it is said that mind and emotions are very, very powerful, rather more powerful than our physical diet. So these are important things generally. It doesn't come to our awareness, but very, very important. And the environment also, the environment in which we live also has quite huge impact on our health, specifically in today's era. So these are the basic things that we need to be aware about and we need to work upon.
Well, you made a very interesting point, particularly on the seasons and making changes according to the seasons. The Rutu that we call about Rutus that change and all. Interestingly, two English words, ritual as well as rhythm, come from Ritu. So if you are in rhythm with our Ritu, and rhythm is also about order, cosmos, how the cosmos has to be in order. Therefore, I think it's a very important point that you bring about, that if you want to be in connection with the larger world, you need to be able to do the right things. What you're saying is actually quite fairly simple. So, are there any conditions in types of food and also the quantum of food that we eat,
Yeah.
and foods to be avoided, kind of thing? Any tips that you can?
Yeah. Thank you for pointing out the missing part, which I probably missed. Yeah, see, kind of the amount of food is also very important, and it is said that we should take the amount that much that we can digest, and how we feel that whether it is digested or not. There are simple things like after taking meal, we should not feel heavy in the stomach. That is the first and foremost important indicator. And maybe after 3 to 4 hours of after our meal, major meal, our stomach, we should feel that our stomach is now empty. These are the signals. It is also said that we keep whatever is the capacity of our stomach, we fill it half with the solid food, one fourth with the liquid food, and keep one fourth empty just for the air. So these are the simple things that one can keep in mind. And of course, as far as quality of food is concerned, nowadays many people take refrigerated food or rather refrigerated liquids also. Also
ಹೋಗಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ರಜನೆ
Yeah.
refrigerated water or refrigerated food, and it is completely contraindicated for good health. So when we take cold food or stale food, our fire gets dumped, and it will not be able to digest properly the food that we are taking. So always take warm food, and it is also important the environment when we are taking food. It should be enjoyable, and it should not be like either talking on mobile or maybe watching some TV serial and taking food. It is also not the thing that is, or rather it is hazardous for our body.
A couple of things I think most people would be doing, that is sitting in front of a television while eating, as well as so many people actually take their mobile phones to the dining table. So,
yeah,
both things are fairly common things that we see. Now, so when a patient comes to you, right at the beginning you said, many patients come to you and they're already heavily medicated in that sense. Right? I mean,
yeah,
they've gone to many doctors, or perhaps taken a lot of medicines and everything. So how does that, how do you so I'm just trying to understand, how would you look at this patient, how would you treat him, and what is the treat him or her, and what are the kind of lifestyle changes that you would slowly ask this person to incorporate before they can become comfortable with this naturopathy kind of thing? And is
yeah.
it possible to wean people away from lifestyle diseases, like for example people on diabetic medication, for example, or hypertensives, for example?
Yeah. See, when a patient comes to us, We examine the patient thoroughly. We have a good case paper where we try to analyze their lifestyle in as far as diet is concerned, their daily routine is concerned, whether they are doing exercise or not, and what about their psychological and emotional part also we try to examine. So these are the broad areas where we would like to examine the lifestyle of a person, or rather health seeker, what we say. And depending on his condition, we chart out a diet plan for them. Generally, when people come here, our major program for the treatment is detoxification. So we would like to go for a kind of very light diet. Either they are kept on fruit diet, or maybe on just liquids, or maybe just juices, or even fasting also. They are kept on just water to our water fasting also. So this is as far as food is concerned. Some of them are also kept on normal naturopathic diet, where it's completely free from chili and very little of salt, or maybe very little of oil also. So that is the generally the diet that we provide to the patient depending on their conditions and all that and requirement. Then the other part of our treatment program is naturopathic detoxification treatments. There are certain hydrotherapy treatments, mud therapy treatments, massage, steam bath, and things like that. Depending on the condition, we give them the plan out the treatment. Then we also have acupressure, acupuncture facility available with us. We also have a full-time physiotherapist with us because many of the patients, they come with cold orthopedic problems. So physiotherapy is one of the important part. And we also focus on, as I said previously, on mind and emotions. So we have a counselor with us, and we also have a clinical hypnotherapist with us. One works more on conscious mind, and another works more on subconscious mind. So that part also, and we have seen that with working on mind and emotions, it gives wonderful results, and also changes the life of a person many a times. So this is the treatment program. And as the day pass, we keep on monitoring the patient depending on the disease parameters. And as they start improving, we gradually wean off the medicines. As far as weaning off the, or maybe keeping the disease under control without medicine is concerned, like diabetes, high blood pressure, and all, I would say there are many patients where we have been able to completely omit antihypertensives, anti-diabetic medicines altogether, with good blood pressure control, with good blood sugar control, and all that. So it is definitely possible. And now we have wonderful, good quality research also available. Like you must have heard about Dr. Dean Ornish program on reversing the heart disease. Right. Or maybe Neil Bernard's program on reversing the diabetes. And there are many other doctors also who have given the program. And if you just go through their research, they don't name naturopathy, but whatever is that program, it is all like naturopathy, what we practice since many years. It is just completely changing lifestyle, and it gives the results without without any medicine.
Yeah, in addition to the names that you mentioned, I think one of the things that has become very popular in the West, particularly with people like Dr. Jason Fung, for example, or Dr. Das also, in fact. Is this intermittent fasting, where they call it the 8-16, they eat whatever they want to eat in an 8-hour window, and then fast for 16 hours during the day. It seems very similar to our Ekadashi Vrata, for example, to me. That we used to have one, that we have once in 11 days kind of things. But have you have you experienced any benefits with the intermittent fasting? It's very popular in India too. So.
Yeah. Fasting has a big role to play in naturopathic treatments. But when the patients are here during taking treatment as an indoor patient, we go for continuous water fasting. It is not intermittent. So it may be for maybe 2 days, 3 days, or maybe even 1 week, or 10 days, or even 31 days also. The maximum record that we have here is 31 days pure water fasting continuously.
No solid, no food at all.
no food at all, no, not even fruit juice also.
Oh,
When we provide them fruit juice, it is called as juice fasting or juice diet, rather, so to say. But when naturopath says fasting, it is pure water fasting. So, but it has to be always medically under medical supervision. People can do fasting for maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 day at the most at their home, but we do not recommend long-term fasting on their own without medical supervision. But intermittent fasting can definitely be done at home, and it has, I mean, there are good researches also, and they have provided very good results with intermittent fasting, starting from diabetes to various kinds of autoimmune disorders and even cancers and Alzheimer's also. They have found good results with intermittent fasting. So fasting, whatever was there in our heritage, now it has got a good therapeutic value, and it is now backed by scientific evidences.
yes. And so it's become very popular. So,
Popular, yeah.
tell us something about Nisargopachar and how it was set up and how did it all come about?
Uh, Sorry, I did not get your question. Can you
No,
repeat it?
I'm talking about the institution that you work
Yeah,
at, which is Nisargopachar.
right.
So, if you could share with us how you went about setting it up and how does it function? How did it all come together? Is kind of what I was asking.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I did not set up the Nisargopchar Kendra where I'm working at present. The Nisargopchar Kendra was established in 1978. And as you know, many Gandhian workers who believed in Gandhi and Gandhian programs, many of them started various kinds of work that Gandhiji believed in. Some people started with naturopathy also. And similarly, this our center was started by a team of Gandhian people, and they ran till 1978 to 2003, and I joined there in 2003. So, but after my joining in, we have made many changes and have made it more holistic, rather, so to say, including mind and emotions and certain environmental part also, which we can change in our lifestyle, because now the environment also has big impact on our health. So unless we make some changes in our lifestyle pertaining to environment, in long term, it will have a very deleterious effect on health in general. So what we do here when a patient gets admitted, as I said, that the program is prescribed according to the needs of the person, but at the same time, we also conduct lectures on daily basis to make people aware about what are the different aspects of our health, what are the factors that affect our health, and how we can make the changes, what are the basic principles of naturopathy, and they can also relate to the treatments that are given, what are the benefits of the treatment on all that. So when they are here, they start getting some changes in their health, positive changes. At the same time, they also get some theoretical background, and that makes them much more motivated. And many of them, after going from here, we always give them a kind of discharge consultation and what kind of lifestyle changes they want to make in their life after going back from here, whatever they can make. There is a consultation between the person, patient, and the doctor. And whatever is feasible, the doctor will try to advise them. So many of them also try to follow to some extent and make step-by-step changes in their lifestyle.
Um, this is a question that needs to be asked. The thing is, do you think naturopathy and the traditional systems of medicine have a role in epidemic diseases like COVID-19, for example?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, Ramesh. See, first of all, naturopathy is basically a lifestyle. It has got a huge preventive and health promotive value, and it also has therapeutic value. So, as far as preventive role is concerned, if we follow naturopathic lifestyle or rather natural lifestyle, it will increase our resistance powers to any kind of diseases, particularly the infective and lifestyle disorders. So that way, it is very important. As far as treatment is concerned, I myself have treated around 30 to 40 patients of COVID-19 during this epidemic without a single allopathic medicine. So even my mother, she was 82 years when she contracted COVID, and I was just observing her. I gave her a certain herbal kathas, but I did not give her even paracetamol also. And I was just observing her. If her condition would have deteriorated, I would have resorted to the medicine which was required. But otherwise, she came out without any single medicine. And that is true for many of the patients. Of course, in couple of patients also, I required to give them steroids and even other medicines also. But we used to monitor them, and if their parameters were within normal limits, we did not start any allopathic medicine.
Very, very interesting. And I must add that you already mentioned it, but I also must add that any of this can be done only under medical supervision. So,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely, yeah.
So I think quite a few questions that have come up in terms of in the chat window, particularly about is it? I think some questions that are more of like, is it possible for example, for the pancreas, for example, to become rejuvenated and get back the kind of functioning that they had earlier through naturopathy? Are there specific things that you can provide tips for? Particularly, indigestion seems to be a fairly common issue that people want to ask.
Yeah, I would like to say that each and every tissue and each and every organ in our body is a living organ. It has capacity to rejuvenate itself, provided we provide it proper environment to rejuvenate and detoxify. So that kind of faith has, I started believing in that with my experience with naturopathy. So the most important thing is to provide proper environment. And when our organ is diseased, generally we give light diet so that we reduce the load on digestive system. We also advise people to give physical rest and even mental rest also. And that itself starts the rejuvenating process. This is the most basic step that everyone should follow. And depending on the condition, then experienced naturopath or an experienced doctor will definitely advise what else can be added. There are certain things which can help to rejuvenate pancreas, or rather, there are certain anti-diabetic agents also, herbal agents also available in the, in our country. So that can be made use of it. As far as the indigestion is concerned, rather than resorting to any herbs or any medicine, first thing that is required is to give rest to the digestive system. If you just give rest to the digestive system, it will take care of its own on its own.
Yeah, true. The other thing is okay, so in I've also heard of some naturopaths also talk about the prana or the vital force, which they say is an indicator of health. So so if you could tell us how stress, poor diet, and affects this vital force or prana, and how can we ensure that we have that I've read that the vital force is an indicator of both life longevity as well as probably imminent death also and all of that. So how does one work to improve the prana or the vital force within ourselves?
Yeah. See, there are basically two important words in the philosophy of naturopathy. One is vital force, or maybe prana, and another is a toxin. The way we live, gradually the waste product starts collecting in our body. Unless the person leads very healthy lifestyle, it's a different thing. Otherwise, certain kinds of toxins or maybe waste products gets collected within our body. And naturopathy terms them as toxins. The collected waste products is a toxin in the body. And gradually with that kind of collection, our body functions will start deranging or dysfunction will happen. Another important word is vital force. It is the basic force that we all have, and that is responsible for each and every activity, each and every action that our living body is, doing. Uh, if there is no vital force or prana, nobody can. That is basically the living force. Nobody can have proper digestion if the vital force is down or weak. People will have weak digestion, they will have weak excretion, and so too their toxin will also get collected within the body. They will have general lack of energy in the body and all that. These are the different manifestations of weak prana or weak vital force. And it can also be, if we can remove the factors that hinder prana, like overeating is one thing that causes overuse of vital force, because when the person overeats, the more of the vital force will be spent to digest the not non-required amount of food or energy, and to excrete that waste products also vital force will be spent. So overeating is one of the important cause for down or vital force um, which goes down.
Yeah. So if we've been talking, we talk of even the WHO and all of that, they've started to redefine what health is. I mean, it's no longer about being disease free, but about health itself. So if you were to define what is a disease free and healthy life according to the principles of naturopathy, how if you had to say that this person is healthy, so what would be the parameters on which you would decide that that person is a healthy person?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like what WHO has defined, it is basically physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely absence of disease or infirmity. Right? That is what WHO says. There is wonderful definition given by Sushruta in Ayurveda, and regarding health, and they say that it is samadosha, shama agni, samadhatu malakriya, prasanna atma indriya manah swastha iti abhidhiyate. So the person who has physiological well-being, samadosha, samadhatu, sama agni, sama malakriya, that is physiological well-being, and atma, mana, indriya, that is basically psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So naturopathy does not have its own definition of health, but I would say whatever naturopathy understands, it is more near to Ayurveda's definition about health. But we can say that if the person's digestion is good, person's excretion is good, the energy level is good, of course there is absence of any kind of disease, and the person generally have quiet and happy psychological state for most of the time during the day, and he harbors or she harbors positive emotions towards one's own self and others, I would say that person can be healthy as far as from naturopathic point of view. But that is quite near to the Ayurvedic definition of health.
And I think there are quite a few. There is also a question which says that somebody who's lived an extremely disciplined life and suddenly well into his 70s has decided to not to follow any of the principles that he himself was following. So how do we kind of talk about it? So that's, I think, like you said, it's all about an individual. Right? The individual has to. You spoke about the environment, and I'm assuming that you're talking of the internal environment within the human body as well as the external environment in which we all function. How do we, many of the things that you suggested are fantastic to ensure that the internal environment within our body can be taken care of. But most of us, live in highly polluted cities. We live in apartments that are like matchboxes, one mounted on top of the other. And, and in such a situation, and with the noise pollution, dust, and all of those things, how do we ensure that our external environment also can be taken care of, particularly when we live in such places.
Yeah. Yeah, WHO says that 90% of the people, more than 90% of people are inhaling polluted air. It is not healthy air. So it is pitiable situation that the basic things without which we cannot live, air, water, and food, everything is now polluted. So, but with even in this given situation, we need to find out ways how we can change that, and it is possible. See, the air we are inhaling is polluted at present. The water we are drinking also contains various chemicals, even plastic particles also. And we get exposed to various kinds of hundreds of chemicals each and every day. Maybe from air pollution, maybe from water pollution, maybe from pesticides in our food, maybe from food additives, various kinds of chemicals in form of food additives in our food, and even preservatives and all that. So we need to look at our lifestyle and whatever can be changed. Like there are simple things which everyone can make a change. Like if we just avoid using plastics in our daily routine, and specifically from coming into contact with eatables or maybe liquids that we drink, our water bottles needs to be changed. Our water storage things requires to be changed. We can stop using disposable plastic cups or disposable dishes like that. This small change can definitely happen, or we can make it. Even these non-stick cookwares contains Teflon and hazardous chemicals. We can avoid whatever cosmetics we can do away with. So these are the things which can definitely make. Even our personal care products like soaps, toothpaste, shampoos, all of them contain chemicals. So we can definitely, if we are aware about it, we can definitely reduce the use of maybe toothpaste or maybe soap, or maybe even replace our hand wash or shampoos with soaps. We can also have handmade soaps, or maybe some people might be making for us without dangerous chemicals. The things that like personal care products like soap or maybe shampoos that we choose should be bland, or rather with natural color rather than with strong colors or artificial colors or certain flavors and things like that. So these are the things that one can definitely make some changes in the lifestyle. And of course, we also need to think about reducing our personal needs. We can't have uh, healthier options for each and everything. So we definitely need to think about reducing the needs that or our carbon footprint that we are making on this earth. These are the things that requires to be changed.
I think the things that you listed, it looks like most of the things that we normally use need to be thrown out. For example, shampoos, soaps, and one of the you spoke about toothpaste also. Do you think this is a question that I've often thought of? For example, the one product that goes into our mouth every day is the toothbrush, which is made of plastic, and the bristles are nylon. So, but I've also heard that one cannot do without a toothbrush. So, how do a friend of mine actually came up with she manufactures bamboo toothbrushes in Bombay. But the problem with bamboo toothbrushes is particularly in humid climates, they get infected with fungus. They become fungus infected. So, it's very keen to know how we can replace some of the things that seem almost irreplaceable in our life.
Yeah. As far as toothbrush is concerned, I do not have found a good solution or rather alternative in place of toothbrush. I am also using the same toothbrush that is available in the market. But what I have started doing is reducing the size of toothpaste to pea size.
Yeah.
You can clean your mouth even with that, or maybe you can go for good quality, very fine tooth powders. They're still better. Toothpaste also contains various kinds of dangerous chemicals, including triclosan and all that, and they have negative impact on our endocrine systems. So even soap also, rather than using soap on daily basis, naturopathy advocates friction bath. You can have a towel, rough towel with you and make it wet and give a friction to the body and just take bath. That is perfectly okay. You do not need to use soap on daily basis. And shampoos, no need to throw it out. You can reduce the use, or maybe you can replace it with some kinds of soap, because hand wash and shampoos contain more number of dangerous chemicals than compared to the soap.
Oh,
So these are the things.
you mean the liquid hand wash is more dangerous than the normal
uh,
soap?
yeah, definitely, because to provide this kind of properties, they
Mhm.
add more number of chemicals.
It's become very popular now. Everybody and sanitizers.
I have not been using sanitizers since long, so, and I haven't contracted COVID. So all this depends more on our immunity rather than just external agents like sanitizers. If we have been using sanitizers for such a long, microbes must have found their own ways to make it resistant to the chemicals that we are using in sanitizers. So these are the things we really need to, of course, government advocates that, but I personally believe that they are of not much use.
They're of not much use. And I must ask about outside food. I think should we avoid it altogether, reduce it, or what do we do? Because eating out has become fashionable, and eating out
Ye-
has become convenient with food being delivered to your doorstep now. So
Yeah, convenience comes with a huge cost. See, all these foods that are readily available, they contain various kinds of food additives or chemicals in form of either preservatives, artificial colors, artificial flavoring agents, various kinds of processing chemicals, and they have really, huge negative impact on our body. I do not know, many people here might be aware about a study that was done by Center for Science and Environment, Delhi-based institute, maybe some 10 years back. And they tested various kinds of uh, bread samples that was available in the market. And almost 90% of the samples contain carcinogen. Just think about it. The routine bread that we take from market, it contains carcinogen preservative chemicals. And most of the samples did not even label that particular name of the chemical on their packets. So this is a situation that we are facing today. So as much as we can reduce it, it is better for our health.
only yesterday I was reading that very popular brands of biscuits. They have there is a study that has shown that they contain high amounts of acrylamides and therefore uh, are carcinogenic and therefore need to be avoided. I'll not mention the brands because it's not the right thing, but I mean very popular biscuit brands that have come up that are known now proven to have substances that simply should not be going into your
Yeah.
mouth at all. So, uh, if there are three things that we could start practicing from tomorrow, three simple things. I mean, this is a whole change that we have to completely change our entire lifestyle from what I'm hearing from you. And if, uh, if there are three things that you think that you would prescribe immediately for us that we can start from tomorrow, what would those three things be?
Yeah, first of all, we need to be aware about the diet and need to make some changes in our daily routine and diet. That is one most important thing. Second thing I would like to say is to practice relaxation, any kind of relaxation practice on regular basis, because mind and emotions play a huge role on our health. So any kind of, maybe it might be kind of just breathing awareness or mindfulness meditation or some other kind of meditation or progressive muscular relaxation, any kind of relaxation technique on regular basis, that is must. And the third thing, we also need to be aware about whenever we get some kind of disease, how we manage those disease. This is also very, very important. Generally, when we go to a doctor, they will give some medicine and they just suppress the symptom. Basically, when the disease comes, it is the signal of the body to throw out the toxins from the body. And we need to be aware about that. We need to give time to the body so that body can work upon itself and just throw out whatever toxins it wants to throw it out. So these are the three things I would say very, very important to follow naturopathy in our daily routine.
And one last question, if I before we conclude, because we have about 3-4 minutes before we can conclude. Do you see naturopathy becoming mainstream and, in a sense, in a sense, becoming mainstream, acceptable? Because no matter how we see it, the first thing that people relate to and go to is the allopathic and the medicine systems. So do you see that happening at all soon, or?
Soon seems quite difficult as of now, but I can definitely say that people are becoming more and more aware about their health and the options that will provide long-term health. Many of people now are realizing that allopathic medicines are providing short-term reliefs. And they also are thinking about changing it to a lifestyle change and all that. So rather than whether it becomes mainstream or not, but this is very, very basic things that everyone needs to understand and try to follow. And if we just ignore that, no matter whatever kind, maybe the kind of pathy or medicine will not, I would say it will not work unless we change our lifestyle, whether you name it in form of naturopathy or maybe any other thing. But if you just cannot ignore the lifestyle that we are living, and we cannot become healthy or regain health without focusing on our lifestyle.
And one question I probably did not ask you was that spoke about exercise. So what is the sort of exercise that you think is ideal for people to be?
Yeah, any exercise, I would say simple walking or running or jogging or cycling or whatever. It's kind of cardio exercise that requires to be done. Many people go to the gym for muscle building and all that, but basically for maintenance of health, what is required is kind of that provides good exercise to our heart and respiratory system. That is cardio. Generally, people say like that. So simple walking is also fine. Anything. We do not require equipments for that. Neither we need to go to gym for that. Simple anything. Even if we are not able to go outside, in simple exercise like Surya Namaskar or something, asanas like Surya Namaskar can also be a good exercise.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think all the people who have joined us here, as well as those watching on YouTube, and who will watch it later as when we share the recorded versions, I think there's a lot of takeaways that they can a lot of takeaways that they can take home and perhaps incorporate into their lives. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I want to thank you on behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement, as well as the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, for taking the time out and sharing these wonderful insights with us. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ramesh, for taking all the time and efforts to coordinate all the things. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I think we come to the end of conversation number 10. In conversation number 11, we will be speaking to Pankaj Saxena, who is an expert on temples in India. So we will be talking to him. We will be talking to him about how temples by themselves are living ecosystems. So that will be next week. Till that time, thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend. And thank you, Dr. Shah, once again. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.